Hello everyone. So this is a presentation that I gave earlier this month for a computer high school course in Fountain City here in Knoxville. And I wanted to do a recording of this just so I can share this to everyone else out there in the world. So this is basically targeted towards students who do not have a programming background but may be interested in doing game development. So this is basically an overview of not actually how to create a game, but just an introduction to all of the tools that are available so that students are exposed to these various tools that can be used to create games. So, a little bit about me. I've been developing games for over 20 years now. I started in the late 90s. When I was in high school, I had a 386 computer. It came with DOS 5.0. Eventually upgraded it to DOS 622. But the nice thing about Microsoft DOS was it came with a compiler or a scripting language called QBasic that you could use to create computer programs or games, and you could also do graphics using QBasic. Very simplistic graphics, but you could actually do graphics and create some neat little games. And I created a handful of games, like number guessing games and like a dartboard game. And the one that I spent most time on was called Mystic Sword, and it was a little RPG where you could select your party of like wizards and warriors and things like that, and you would go explore the world and get into battles and fight monsters and things like that. So I have two games that are currently published on the Xbox 360 console on the Xbox Live Indie Game Marketplace, which are Resistor, which is a electronics puzzle game, and TTY GFX Adventure, which is an RPG with retro graphics that sort of look like an old style BBS game. I frequently participate in game jam competitions. The most notable is Ludum Dare. I've been doing that for over 2 years, almost 3 years now, and I've created quite a few number of games for that. And there's also a mini Ludum Dare, which I usually participate in every month. I've also been speaking at technical conferences on game development and other topics, such as how to create models in Blender, how to program an assembly, such as the 6502 assembly language to create NES games. Then talks about Unity and the Playmaker tool and how to use social media to promote your games. And I've talked frequently at the Codestock convention here in Knoxville, Tennessee. I've also recently spoken at the DevSpace conference in Huntsville, Alabama. And also, I'm a frequent speaker at the monthly Knoxville Game Design meeting. And I also graduated in 2002 with a degree in computer science with a specialization in software engineering from Georgia Tech, and also have a master's degree in industrial engineering from the University of Tennessee. So, what goes into making a game? First of all, you've got to have the game engine. That's like the heart or the brains of your game. Everything gets fed into the game engine. And I'll be talking a little bit about the tools that you can use for your game engine. So, what goes into it? You have your code or scripting. Your code is written in any number of various languages, such as C# or Java, Smalltalk if you want to use that, or a scripting language such as Ruby or Python. But there's also a lot of visual scripting environments too, and I'll be talking about some of those. You have your level design, and there's many tools that you can use for that. So that's basically the layout of your level, how all the blocks and different things in the level environment are laid out, where all the enemies are placed, and things like that. You also have various assets such as your graphics. If you're doing a 2D game, you have your 2D artwork, which are called sprites for the different characters in your games. And those are basically just raster graphics composed of just different pixels in a square. And also, if you're developing a 3D game, then you have your 3D artwork, which are typically models, which you can create in different tools, modeling tools, and also you can rig those with an armature to give it animation. And also, another type of asset is the audio, such as the background music, which typically loops in an infinite loop, which may change for the different scenes in your game, and also the sound effects, which are played whenever an event occurs in your game, such as somebody getting hit, you have a punch sound, or an explosion, you have a boom sound go off. So some of the engines that are available for people to use. To the 2D engines, you have Game Maker, very popular, Stencil, Construct 2, XNA or MonoGame, SDL, and Allegro. And also there's 3D engines. The two most popular ones are Unity 3D or Unreal Engine. Or you could actually write your own game engine, which I've done before. Developed a game which was a Tetris city building simulation type game, hybrid, and I actually wrote my own engine and did all the OpenGL calls to do the 3D graphics and all that myself. So especially for simple games, you can write very simple games in Java and just write the engine yourself. So the first engine I'll talk about is Game Maker. There's a free studio version that anyone can download and use and create games and distribute your games. There's also a paid version. I think you have to buy the paid version if you want to deploy on certain platforms such as mobile. But some of the more notable games that have been developed in Game Maker are Spelunky, Vault the Story, and Hotline Miami. And Game Maker is created by a company called Yo-Yo Games. So when you start up Game Maker, it'll give you this window right here, and you can either play other people's games or you click Make if you want to make your own game. So when I first used Game Maker, I followed one of the tools or tutorials for to create a game called Catch the Clown. So I'm going to go in and find that game. So this is the Catch the Clown game that I developed. And the level design in Game Maker, they call it a room. And basically you have all the different boxes laid out. Zoom in a little bit there. You can see where all these boxes are over here and the clown right there. And you have your art assets such as the little clown character. He's just a sprite right there. And there's also the wall object, so the character, whenever he bumps into the wall, he starts going in a different direction. And down here you actually have the objects, and here's where all the game logic is actually controlled. So you have these events in this column right here where you have something that happens over here, such as when the clown is created, then he starts moving in a direction, and it has this concept of an alarm. This is basically just like a countdown. So whenever this alarm goes off, then it will do different logic over here, such as it starts moving in a different direction, and they transform the way the sprite is facing, and then the countdown starts again. And also the input is controlled right here, left pressed. Then we're going to add 10 to the score. We're going to play a sound when he's clicked, the clown is going to move to a new position, then he's going to start going in a different direction. And also you have the different audio, the sounds, such as when he bounces off a wall, when you click on him, and the background music. And also there's the background, which is just another 2D image that's displayed in the background. So I'm going to run this game. Takes just a moment to compile. So you can see the clown here, he's bouncing around. You got your score over here to the side. So if I click him, he's going to move to another position, then he's going to start bouncing again. And I get 10 added to the score each time. So that's a quick overview of Game Maker. The next engine that I'll talk about is Stencil. This is based on a programming environment. I believe it was created by MIT called Scratch. And basically, it's kind of like Lego blocks. You have these actions over here, and whenever something happens, then it executes everything within this block, but you just pull those actions into here, and you can change these drop-down menus here to select your different objects or values. Stencil is available for Mac, Windows, and Linux, and it uses, for the physics environment, it uses Box 2D physics. So here's the startup for Stencil. I'm going to click one of the games that I've created for one of the game competitions called Dream World. And when it starts up, it shows all the different scenes. So the scenes are like the rooms or the levels for your game. So I'm going to click on the first level right here. You can see my main character, this little teddy bear guy right there. And then you have the collectibles, these Z's over here, and then the enemies right there. And you can just like click over here to select your tiles and add new tiles to your game wherever you choose to do so. And then you have the different characters in your game. Those are the actors. So if I want to put a new enemy, I just click him right there. So this is the game running right here. There's a little teddy bear guy, and he can jump and collect the collectibles, and then when you hit an enemy, it basically restarts, and you got to start the level all over again. And every time you pick up one of those collectibles, it adds 50 to your score. So if you go over to behaviors, you can see here's my actor. Whenever you can actually drill down and edit the behavior of your character, and this is how you do the programming right here, which I showed earlier. You just go in and you can drag different things, different values, set the score to 0, or if you want to put in your own value like 42 for whatever reason, you just change the value to your new integer value right there. Or you can have these different selectable values, such as pi or whatever you want to put in there. And over here on the right side, here's where all of the different types of actions and control structures, like under flow, if you need an if statement or a Boolean value, or testing if something is equal, you do all that over here. Have your loops. If you need to repeat something so many times, just drag this out onto here. and then you have your objects over here. You just you can't snap that one in there, but you can like set a value that just snaps in right there, like an X or Y value. You can set the value right there. And you have the trash can up here, so you can just, stuff you don't need, just drag it up to your trash can. And here's also another view of all the different actors in the game. So this is like a collectible coin type object right here. You can view the behaviors for that and collision properties. You can set the bounds of the collision for these different objects by moving this collision box around. And the hero. And for these characters, they're going to be composed by multiple sprites, which give the animation. So you can see all the different animations when he's standing and jumping to the left or the right, or walking to the left or right. And you can actually click on one of these animations and you can see all the frames of the animation right there. Behaviors, they got some built-in behaviors, so you don't have to write the code yourself. So if you need something to manage health, or if you need the camera to follow, it's already got that behavior built in. You just assign that behavior to your character, and it already has all the logic built for you right here for having the camera follow your character. Otherwise, whenever you get to the edge of the screen, the camera's just going to stay stationary, then your character will walk off the screen. And the run and jump, that's also built in, so you don't have to, you can just supply your own values, such as when you press left, you'll move to left, or action 1 to jump, or how much force is applied when you're running, and things like that. Then you also set the animations for being idle when you're not moving. So you also have backgrounds for each of the levels. I have a different background, which I actually used a program called Terran's Verve Painter, and you can assign one of these backgrounds to each of your levels. And it will do the parallax scrolling for you. You just set these horizontal and vertical scrolling speed values right there if you want to have the parallax scrolling. If you want a custom font, you can set that right here. Already talked about the scenes or the levels. All the different sounds, you just pull in your sound files. And like here's a jump sound, and you can play it right here. The tiles that go into your game. Here's all the logic that I'm using in the game. Camera follow, horizontal movement, back and forth. Back and forth is for the enemy movement. And you can see that's the code right there. Different behaviors for the scene. And they got these resource packs where you can pull things in from other packages. The third game engine I'll talk about is Construct 2. I've just used this a little bit, and it's very similar to the other ones that I've talked about. A little bit different, but you use visual programming. There's a free version, but it's more limited than the other two, Game Maker and Stencil, that I mentioned earlier, talked about earlier. You have a limited number, I think 100 actions, and that's it. Then they'll want you to buy the paid version, which I think is like $130 or something like that right now. And also there's a lot of nags in there. Whenever you close the game, then you got to wait like 5 seconds. When you close the editor, you got to wait 5 seconds if you don't have the paid version. And it's created by companies called Skira. And there have been a few games created, Next Penelope and Airscape: The Fall of Gravity. And I'll start this up, and I created a game called Swap Troid. Basically a game similar to an old school 2D platformer, and similar to the rooms and the scenes in the other one, this has layouts. So layout is basically a screen, so you can click on that, and this is where you define what the level is laid out, layout of all the enemies and blocks, and your player just gives you this big grid, and you can actually drag like an enemy. So here's all the game objects over here. So you can like select an enemy, and I believe you can just pull him into your game right there. So you got a new enemy. Got your new enemy right there in your game. You just pull them in. Then you can move them around, or like if you want to make them bigger, you can do that. Or I think there's a rotate, if you can rotate them around, things like that. And all of your graphics assets are assigned to your different objects through here. Here's your tile maps, the different tiles. They're all defined under your project right here. Object types. And then you got your mouse and keyboard controls. And then your sounds, like when you hit or you shoot or you jump, all those sounds are available right there. And then the background music right here, using an OGG format, and you can actually create an OGG using a tool called Audacity, which I'll talk about a little bit later. And your game logic is actually in these event sheets. So here's the game logic right here. So you have like your global variables up here at the top. Things that never change, like number of items you start out with, the number of maps, the current map. And then here in this left column, this is like the action or events in your game. Like for every tick, you're going to do this. I'm actually doing a swapping of sprite sheets. That's what all that is. But right there. But if you get down here in the bottom, you can see, such as, if an enemy's health is less than 0, then you're going to destroy the enemy. If a bullet goes outside the layout, if it goes outside the room, then we're going to destroy the bullet. The hero collides. If your player collides with an item, then you're going to add 1 to the item's variable. Then you're going to play the pickup sound. So that's how your game logic is created in Construct 2. So I'll go ahead and try to run this game. Little run right there. And we'll actually run it in a web browser. Got the sprite swapping effect going on every few seconds. So you got an energy variable that tracks how much health you have, how many items you've collected, and the objective is to collect all the items in the game. And then if you lose all your health, and you just start over from the beginning. Yeah, so that's Construct 2. I'll also show, like if you click one of these objects, find a good one here. Click this guy. That'll actually bring up the sprite sheet for this guy, the sprites that he's composed of. You can make it a little bit bigger. And then the animation frames are down here. So this is like the 3 frames of this guy walking. So you can like actually import a sprite sheet and it will figure out all the different sprites in that sprite sheet based on the grid size that you specify. So don't save that. So here's the little nag screen if you don't buy it. So just say close. The next one, which this is what I used to create my Xbox games, X and A. I used C# as the language, which is an object-oriented language, very similar to Java. The only basic difference is you can only compile for Windows. It isn't platform independent. But the syntax is very similar in X and A. There's just a few small differences. And then there's MonoGame, which I really haven't used much MonoGame, but it's very similar. It's basically an open source implementation of X and A, so you can actually run your X and A games on other platforms. And some notable X and A games: Dust and Elysian Tale, Rogue Legacy, Terraria, Adventures of Shuggy, and Axiom Verge. And some notable MonoGame games: Bastion and Fez. I think those are both available on Linux. And basically in an X and A game, you have your code, and there's 2 main functions. Your update function, which is, I believe it's every frame that's called, and that's where you update the game logic. Then you have a draw method where you draw all the different objects on the screen. Now it is possible to do a 3D game in X and A, but it is very difficult. I tried making one myself and didn't have... I made progress, but it wasn't as easy as using a 3D game engine. But it is very nice for making 2D games. And I mentioned my 2 games earlier, Resistor and TTY GFX Adventure, which are there on the screen. I'll open the code for one of my Resistor game. So you use Visual Studio for the editor, the IDE, Integrated Developer Environment, and you can see here is where I have my Xbox build right there, and also have, I believe, a Windows build. Maybe I don't have a Windows build for this one. Yeah, Windows copy, so that will actually make a desktop version for you that isn't deployed to the Xbox console. But like the other environments, you have your code up here under your project, all the different game pieces and the level definitions and the different screens and things like that. Then you have your content, which are your assets, such as your images. Like here's a battery image, which is just a PNG file. Yeah, it just opens it in Paint, so there's a little battery right there. And also all of your music, such as the title screen music, which it tries to open it up with Audacity by default. And the different sound effects. But if I click on one of these, like say the game piece, then yeah, it's just all code. I mean, you don't have any visual environment for actually placing the game objects. It's just all done in code, so yeah, a little bit more difficult to do it this way. One framework or library that I've used is SDL. It's been a while since I've used SDL, but it stands for Simple Direct Media Layer, and it's available for Mac, Linux, and Windows. And you can also supports many different languages such as C, C++, and Ruby, and also Python. If you're using Pygame is actually implemented using SDL, and not too many games are written just in SDL, but the actual tools to create engines are actually written in SDL, such as Cry engine, and also the Source engine, and also some notable games that have been written in SDL are Trine and Don't Starve. And also one library that I used a long time ago, back in the late 90s, was Allegro, and it stands for Atari Low-Level Game Routines. And there's actually a DJGPP compiler, one of the first free DOS compilers for C that I was exposed to. But you could download that and create a DOS game using Allegro, and it's a nice game development environment. I believe it's still around today, still being updated. So if you want to use an older library, more mature game library, Allegro is definitely one to check out. And one of the notable tools created in Allegro is MAME, the arcade emulator. And okay, so one of the more notable 3D game engines is Unity 3D. It's really taken off lately. And now Unity 3D, all the professional features, they're all free now. If you make over like $100,000 on your game, then you're required to buy a professional license, which I believe is $1,500. But Unity, you can develop your games using C# or JavaScript to develop your game logic. And one tool that I like to use is called Playmaker. There's a Unity asset store out there where you can download these tools, you can buy these tools to expand Unity 3D to give you more functionality, or there's also various assets such as models and particle effects which you can get off the Unity asset store through that online asset store. And some of the notable games developed in Unity 3D are Thomas Was Alone, Broforce, Hearthstone, created by Blizzard, City Skylines, and Kerbal Space Program. And here's two of the games that I've developed. The one on the left is One Gunman. The one on the right is Expando Ray. So this is my One Gunman game right here. On the left you have the scene where you can go in and move around in the game world and place objects such as the different cacti. And here in the middle you have the game view. This is what the player sees as they're playing the game. Then you have a hierarchy over here, which are all the different game objects in your game, like the sounds and the different meshes and models in your game, the lights, and the score object displays your score, and then all the 2D assets that are overlaid on top of your game. And for each of these objects, they all have values associated with them in the inspector over here. So you can actually see these values over here for each of like the lighting controls, and you can see all the different lighting options right here. For mesh, you can see all the different mesh options. For your 3D object, the different shaders that are used, any animations that are attached. And for 2D, like text objects, you can set the font style, the color, the alignment, the actual font file, things like that. And you can attach like certain special scripts that you develop to each of those game objects. And over here in the bottom corner is under this assets is where you pull in all your assets such as the music. Here's the game music right there. The sound effects, which again is played through Audacity or whatever you have as your default audio playing software. The fonts that you've pulled in. Materials. Those are what's used to texture map your game objects. Your models, such as the character. And prefabs. These are like instantiatable objects, so things that are dynamically created, such as bullets, things that aren't static, things that can be created and destroyed. Your scene, so basically in most games I have a title screen, the game screen as the game is playing, then a game over screen, but you may also have additional screens such as menu options and things like that, or a credit screen. Then I'll have scripts for the game logic, so I can attach these scripts to an object in my game, such as like, well, what happens when a bullet is shot? And you can see like a little preview over here. Here's all the logic that occurs when a bullet is shot. And if you double click that, now in Windows it tries to open it up with Visual Studio by default. If you're using Mac or any other operating system, then it uses MonoDevelop as the default code editor. So here's the actual code running inside Visual Studio Community Edition. Don't need to log in there. Close that. And you can actually play the game within the editor.
Shoot evens.
You can also minimize this or uncheck maximize, and you can play in that little pane right here. Click this right here and maximize it. The other major free 3D engine is Unreal Engine, and I've created a simple like breakout game using Unreal Engine, but it uses an environment, a visual scripting environment called Blueprints, which you can create a little diagram and just drag these different values and flows into the next box to create your game logic. It's created by Epic Games, and they have a headquarters in Cary, North Carolina, which I believe is near Raleigh, North Carolina. So if you're in the Knoxville area or in the southeast like me, and you are looking to get a game development job, then that's one of the closest places to the southeast. Some notable games, some notable AAA games: BioShock Infinite, Borderlands 2, Gears of War, Mass Effect, Street Fighter V, Tekken 7, like all new games. Shenmue 3 and Unreal Tournament are all created with Unreal Engine. And you can get Unreal Engine for free, which I'll show here right now. One thing I don't like about the Unreal Engine 4, is you got to use this Epic's game launcher. It's like this middleware. So, and it wants to like put all this extra stuff. It's like, oh, play Unreal Tournament or Fortnite. It's like, no, I just want the Unreal Engine. So you can click on it right there. It's like an extra step that I think is kind of unnecessary, but I guess they want to show off all their latest stuff right there. But yeah, like I said, it's free, and I've created my little simple game right here, my little Pong game. Can open that up. So here's the Unreal Editor. You have all your game objects here on the bottom, different controllers and the different blueprints. So here's a a paddle blueprint right there. And you can see right here some, like, when this object bumps into something, and you want to get a handle or reference to the other thing, and you want to convert that like into a string and do something with it. Got like different things here for making vectors and changing speed, and yeah, just all sorts of different actions you can use with Blueprint. I think you can zoom out, and yeah, you got to right click to drag, but these can actually get pretty complex. So like on every frame, on every tick, then you want to do something, you want to build the string and print the string to the screen and do different things down here. Now I forgot to mention with Unity, or maybe I did mention it, there's a tool called Playmaker, which I like to use. It's not free. I think it's currently $60, but it might be going up with the next release. But you can do something similar with state flow diagrams. They call them FSMs, finite state automata, or finite state machine. And you can do something similar, but it's not to this granularity right here, where you can actually grab these different values. You can define variables, but it isn't plug and play like this. So I do like Playmaker for creating games. When creating games in Unity, you can press play right there, and you can control the little paddle right there, and you bounce the little head, little ball, and destroy the little blocks. And you have all your objects up here, world settings. Now the one thing that I do really like about Unreal Engine, they give you a lot of tutorials or a lot of demos. So you go to new project, and they got all these different types of games, like demos, that you can use. So it's like if I want to do a third-person game, just double-click on that and create a project, and here we go. Yeah, it's like a third-person game just created for you, so you can like use this as a guide when creating your own game. So like, got this guy, and he can run up the stairs there, and you can move the camera around, drop down, he can jump. So you can just plug in your own models to this third-person engine right here. Here's an example of a twin-stick shooter. So I can press play, and I can move the little ship around with my arrow keys, and can shoot. Yeah, shoot with the arrow keys and move around with the ASDW keys. So yeah, just a little example of how to create a twin-stick shooter game right here. And it already has all the code for you and everything. For non-programmers, there are a few tools out there. RPG Maker, it's a nice tool, a paid tool where you can just go in. They provide many different sprites for you, so you can just go in and lay out your game world. Yeah, right here, just create your hero, drag them on, create what your world looks like, and it handles a lot of stuff for you. I like it because you can just start it up, and it gives you a game right out of the box. You just say build, and you have a working game. So you can just start from there and expand from that, creating your own assets and game worlds. For the Xbox 360 and Xbox One, Code Game Lab started out on the Xbox 360. That's evolved into Project Spark, which is available for Xbox One and also, I believe, Windows 8 and up. And it has an environment called Code, spelt with a K. And you basically just stack all of these different little tiles on top of each other. So it's sort of like programming, but it's a little bit easier than some of the other environments, but you just basically stack all these. When you have something that happens, then on the win side, if that's true, then it executes whatever is on the D side. And they also have this where you can nest these wins within each other, so it's almost like an if statement right there. And I created a little game, little adventure game down here. They provide a lot of different assets for you. One thing I don't like about Project Spark is you can't import your own models or sound effects. You have to use what they provide to you. And you also can't export your game into an executable. You can't save off your project files. All of your work resides on the Project Spark server. So I really don't care for that. If they gave me a way to download my projects and to add my own assets, I would use it a lot more. So 2D graphics tools. You can always use Paint that comes out of Windows, but it doesn't have a lot of functionality. So Paint.net is a good alternative. It's free, free alternative for Paint. GIMP is a good alternative, a free alternative to Photoshop. You can do a lot of things. I use it for applying filters to a lot of my graphics, or if I'm doing texture mapping, I'll export a layout into GIMP and then I'll do my texture drawing in it. Inkscape is a good tool, which you see here on the right hand side, for doing 2D vector-based graphics, where everything's defined by vectors, lines, things like that, lines and curves and circles. And I created that 2D Dream World game, the little teddy bear guy, using Inkscape, and I just made the different pieces: the head, the arm, the leg, the body, and the other leg, and then I made another one where he's facing forward. And then I imported those into Spriter, and Spriter is a good tool, which I'll show right now. It's a good tool for animating your sprites, and it is a free tool. And I'll go here, open up that teddy bear guy, and you can see him right there. You can actually zoom in, make him bigger, and I got 3 animations for him, and you can actually play it using that right there. So there he is jumping, there he is walking, there he is just idle, just waving. And you can see over here on the left hand side over here all the different parts that compose his body. So I'm going to pause. So there's the head, body, and as you click on each of these, you can see it focus on that body part. So I can move it around. And also on the bottom, you have this timeline. So that's what, as it's animating, it goes through this timeline down here. And you have a keyframe, which is where you actually set the positions of each of the body parts, and it will, what we call interpolating, from one keyframe to another. So his arm will move smoothly from, like, the starting position is right there. It will move smoothly up to the ending position right here. And you don't have to move it yourself. You just set the keyframes. And then you can actually save your sprite. Well, actually, you can save this out into any number of different sprites that you specify. So it will generate all the sprites for you. And also I had the little rabbit guy. That's where he just has one animation where he's walking. But yeah, you can export your animation to a PNG or GIF format. There's another tool that I like that I mentioned earlier, Terran's Verve Painter. It's for more of like if you're trying to do a fluid painting, like you're painting with watercolor or something like that, you can use Terran's Verve Painter for that. 3D modeling tools, there's a few out there that are free, such as Blender. I like using that for doing geometric models. If I'm doing something that's more organic, I like using Sculptress, which you can see here on the right. It's kind of like working with clay or modeling something in clay. And then there's an online free tool called Clara.io, and it's a lot like Blender. There's also paid tools such as 3D Studio Max and Maya. So if you're actually working for a real game company, they probably use those paid tools, but they are very expensive, probably out of the price range of most just independent developers. And I'll show one of my models in Blender. This shark that I developed for a game. So on this one, you can see I have the model over here, and then I have the texture map over here. I won't go into the details of texture mapping, but you can also go into object mode. So you can see them right there, and you can select the armature. So the armature is basically the different bones, and you can see the different. This is similar to the Sprider where I have like 2 keyframes, and it will interpolate between those 2 keyframes. So it looks like he's swimming right there. There's something over here called the dope sheet, and that's where I actually go in and define where all of the bones are placed for each of the keyframes. And that's under the action editor. And I have, you can define the different animations over here. So you can have multiple animations for one model. Sculptress, I'll just show it really quickly here. This is Sculptress, so you can go in and you just basically push in. You can make your little reticule thing right there larger, so you can just push out, or I think you can hold control and push in. You can smooth these out. This is like a turtle head that I did in Sculptress right here. And you can also paint on top of this. Just select the different colors. They got a color wheel right there. Paint them whatever color you want. Here's like a little demon head guy that I created in Sculptress. So yeah, for like organic thing. And the nice thing about Sculptress is most organic creatures are symmetric, so if you want to do something on the left side, it will automatically do it on the right side as well. So you don't have to paint both sides of your model right there. And for music, I like using GarageBand. I'm not on Mac right now, so unfortunately I can't run GarageBand for here, but it's a nice way to compose music with different instrument tracks. And I like it because it'll give you like a musical score right there, and you can just like hold, I think, control and click your notes, whatever notes you want, and select whatever track. So it's a really nice tool, but like I said, it's only available for Macintosh. PX Tone Collage, I'll show it really quickly. And it's just a simple music composition program. It gives you this right here. You can set your own instruments and you just drag the notes like that. You can add a number of different instruments by clicking the plus button. And the different voices, those are your different instruments. Hey, wah, ooh. So I was just making a simple little song using my voice right there. But you can add your own instruments. And also, if you're really inclined to do so, you can get out your own instruments. Like one of my games, my Amish brother game, I just got out a guitar and put a microphone in front of it and in front of the speaker and just recorded it myself. So that's always an option. Sound effects, SFXR or BFXR, that's a good tool for creating sound effects. So you have the different presets over here. I'll actually show you a waveform on the right side right there. The different waveform. And you have all these different sliders you can play with. So yeah, you can get a lot of nice sound effects out of this program. Then you can export them to a wave or save them in its native format. And Audacity is a program I use quite a bit for touching up sound effects or adding different filters. So if I want to like reverse this, I just go into effects and like reverse. Or if I want to make it deeper, I can change the pitch. Just slide this down. And a lot of these give you a lot of different options, like the percent change and all that. Echo is another nice effect if you want an echo effect. And yeah, just so many different things that you can play with in Audacity. It's a really good tool. And level design. If you're doing a 2D game, one tool that I like to use is called Tiled, and it will let you lay out your level. Now, some of the game engines that I talked about earlier, they have built-in level editors where you don't have to worry about this. But if you're doing something like XNA, then you got to generate your own levels. And Tiled will create a format called a TMX tile map, and it's basically XML. So there are some libraries out there that will parse out the contents of a TMX, or you can also write your own parser if you're inclined to do so. Another level editor that I've used in the past is called Mappy, and I like that one because it will actually generate numeric arrays for you that you can just pull out and paste into your code. And with 3D game engines like Unity 3D, they have a concept of a terrain where you can actually, in 3D, raise and lower the terrain in your game. And also, for some games, I create a model in Blender and export that into FBX format and pull that into Unity, and that will be my level right there. But I'll show Tiled. So here's an example of a level in Tiled. This is that Expando Ray game that I was talking about earlier. And basically, these are the different blocks that you can enlarge or shrink in the game. And you can just basically click over here on the sprite sheet and place those anywhere in the game world. And you got the exit over here where you're trying to get to get to the next level. And yeah, you just save that out, and it'll save it as a TMX file, which is basically XML. And you can actually import that XML if you're... I actually did this for Unity. I import the XML into Unity into a resources folder, and then my 3D objects are instantiated based on the objects in that XML file, the specification of that XML file. So, if you're creating your own game and you're not an artist, there are quite a few free assets out there. A few of the sites that I like: CG Textures, a lot of different textures you can use for your models. CC Mixter is a good site for getting music for your games. There's also a site called Free Music Archive, and a lot of that music is Creative Commons music, which means it is free to use, but some of those have different restrictions. As you can see my note at the bottom, check the license for each file that you use to see what restrictions there are on there. A lot of them, they're free to use, but you have to give attribution to the author. But some of the other files may say non-commercial use. So you can use it in your game as long as you don't sell your game. So yeah, just double check on the license for every Creative Commons work that you use. There's a site called Free Sound. This is more focused on sound effects and not music. Incompetech, Kevin MacLeod, he has a lot of music that you can use royalty free for games. And there's also the Unity Asset Store where you can purchase a lot of models and things like that that you can use in your game. The community, I highly recommend. If you're interested in game development, getting involved with the community, getting your name out there. Ludum Dare is a great game competition jam out there 3 times a year: April, August, and December. There's a lot of other game jams out there. You just got to look for them. A lot of them are hosted various times throughout the year. One site that I like checking out is Screenshot Saturday. And basically, if you tweet out a message on Twitter and attach a screenshot and use the hashtag Screenshot Saturday, then it will upload your screenshot of whatever you're working on to this site, and you can go out there and see all the different games that people are working on. And also you can have a page created for yourself where you can see all the games that you've worked on every time that you use that hashtag. The TIG source forums are a good place to go to talk to other developers. People post devlogs or what they're working on and things like that. It's a good community. There's a few good Facebook groups out there, the Indie Game Developers and Indie Game Chat. You can go check those out, see what people are working on, or maybe get feedback for your own game. On Reddit, there's a subreddit called Game Dev, where a lot of developers hang out and discuss game development and the stuff that they're working on. And also, since I did this for a Knoxville group, I recommended checking out our monthly Knoxville game developer meeting. But wherever you're at, I'm sure there's got to be a game developer meeting close by, nearby. And TIG Source Forums, I believe that's a good place to find local events in your area. And there's a few sites that I like checking out for game development news. GameDev.net, that's a good place to go for tutorials if you're starting to learn, but there's also a lot of forums on there for getting advice and things like that. Gamasutra is a great place to go for up to the daily game development news. Polygon and Kotaku are 2 other game. It's not really focused on game development, but you can see things that other developers are working on. But Gamasutra really gets into the details of how games are developed from actual developers themselves, so you get to learn some of the tricks and methods they use for creating games. So if you go through all that and you have a game created there and you want to get your game out there, there's a few different free sites out there that I like to use for distributing my games. GameJolt, you can post either desktop or web games there. They will play ads on top of your games, but you do get part of the ad revenue, but you got to have a lot of plays. Like it's over 1,000 plays for like $1 or something. So don't expect to get rich off Game Jolt. Itch.io is another good site. It also takes desktop or web games. The thing I like about Itch.io is you can actually upload a desktop build and put a price for your game. So, and I don't believe Itch.io currently takes a cut out of your sales. So if you want to go out and sell your game with no barriers, you can just upload it there and set your price, and it should be good to go. And there's no ads on Itch.io, and I really like that. Congregate, it's a lot like Game Jolt. Only web games, Unity or Flash games, and they also have revenue sharing where they play an ad before somebody plays your game, and you get a portion of that ad revenue. And Newgrounds is one of the older ones. It's Flash games only, but yeah, it's another place you want to, if you're developing a Flash game, to share your work. If you want to self-publish your game on one of the major consoles or one of the major platforms, there's a few different places where you can do that. Windows Store, it's pretty easy to get on the Windows Store. I believe there might be a small developer fee to get on there, but yeah, in Unity you can export your game as a Windows Store game, and yeah, just upload it. I think you got to recompile it in Visual Studio, and then you can upload it to the Windows Store. If you want to get on Steam for PC, there's Greenlight. So before you can sell your game on Steam, you got to go through this Greenlight process where you upload a couple of videos, like 4 screenshots of your game. Then people will go on there and either vote your game up or down. Then if the Valve developers deem you worthy, then they'll greenlight you so you can go through the process of getting your game on Steam. Nintendo has a program called Wario World. If you want to get on one of the Nintendo systems like the Wii or the 3DS, they have some strange restrictions, like you must have a lockable room in your house, some strange things like that. If you want to get on the Xbox One, you can sign up for the ID at Xbox program, but they'll admit you into the program, but it's hard to actually get them to allow you to put your game on their system. There's a game submission process, but I really haven't had any luck with ID at Xbox. They're very selective about who they actually let put games on the Xbox One right now. It definitely isn't as easy as the Xbox 360 was. PlayStation has a developer program for publishing a game on the PlayStation Network, but I think they have some strange restrictions as well, like you have to have a business entity such as an LLC, and depending on where you're at, that may be easy or difficult. I know where I'm at, it can be a few $100s to actually start an official business such as an LLC, and that's a yearly cost. So if you're not making a few $100s, it's really not even worth it. A Google Play developer, if you're developing a mobile application, which Unity can export to Android, you just have to export it, and I think you got to do a self-signed cert for your game, but it's not too difficult putting a game on the Google Play Store. But the only downside about Google Play is there's so many other apps out there that you really get lost in the shuffle publishing on Google Play. And also Apple has a developer program for publishing game on iOS, but I haven't signed up for that yet. I think it's like a $99 annual fee or something for the Apple developer program. So here's my closing advice. If you really want to get into game development, I suggest if you have no experience at all, start small. Make it like a simple tic-tac-toe or number guessing game or solitaire, something simple like that, something you know, and implement that just to show that you can actually develop something. Then as you get more experience, you can start building bigger games such as Pong, things with collision detection, puzzle game like Tetris or Pac-Man, and just build your way up from there, and just like create like a, as they say, a portfolio of games to show that you do have the skills for making games. And I always recommend making something you like. I mean, instead of like coming up with all these ideas that you're going to do, just take an existing game, put your own spin on it. Of course, don't call it the same thing, but make your own assets and make it different, but emulate, create something similar to a game that you like. As I mentioned earlier, there's tons of tutorials out there on YouTube and GameDev.net and all those other places I mentioned earlier. So take advantage of the tutorials that are out there. And also, if you want to get into the game design business, you don't have to be an expert at everything. You don't have to know how to code and do modeling and all that. Just pick one aspect and just become an expert at that. I mean, if you're really interested in art, be an expert at art, or modeling, be an expert at modeling, or if you're really into music, learn all you can about doing music, or if you like programming, get into the actual programming, learning as much about game development languages as you can, and all the different tools there are out there for that. And also, if you develop something and you put it out there for the world to play, expect to get criticized. And just take it gracefully. And a lot of people are out there are willing to offer advice on how to make your game better, but then there are on the internet there are just some plain hateful people that will try to like tear your game down, and you just got to ignore those people and take the advice that you find helpful. So yeah, that's all that I have for game development overview. So I hope that everyone found this helpful as just how to get started in game development. And if you have any questions, I'm GA Tech Grad on Twitter, so feel free to drop me a line. Also visit my website levidsmith.com. So yeah, appreciate everyone watching this game development overview. Thanks.